And we are live today. Good morning, everybody. I may seem extra chipper to you. That means I feel great. Sarcasm much? Anyway, I have a thought of the walk that I recorded today. I don't usually record on Friday, but I decided to get a little ahead of the 8 ball on that one. And I recorded it today because I woke up feeling a little kind of punky today. And I just talked about how I got myself over that. So if I'm going to talk to you a little bit while you join the live stream, and then we're going to try this thing with the intro music again when we record the actual podcast. This is, of course, a Homestead Happenings podcast. So yesterday, the skies opened up. Yeah, so I'm like, hey, I need to get more exercise. And that means not, jumping on a four-wheeler in a car to drive places nearby that I can just walk to. So I should just walk. And I walked. And I did the thing I needed to do. And it was time to walk home. And all of a sudden, all the rain came out. So I had the delightful experience of using my outdoor shower yesterday while also being rained on. It's kind of nice, actually. It's kind of, there are these moments that happen when you live on a homestead that are kind of, it's like, they're like little memories or little experiences. So they're nothing major. Like an outdoor shower is really cool if you've ever had one. But it's not like once in a lifetime experience level cool, like amazing miracle of engineering in an airplane or something. That's not once in a lifetime for a lot of us, but that is an amazing feat of engineering if you think about what we do to get on a plane. Hello, Tiger Paw 1129. So on the homestead, you have these little moments that happen, like when your first tomato is ripe each year is a big moment. And look, I get to harvest green beans this afternoon. I've been harvesting like onesie, twosie, handfully of green beans. And the good news, you'll hear later in the homestead update, of course, the good news is I've got like green bean palooza this week, which means I'm making dilly beans or canned green beans. Good morning, Michael. And it'll be great. But I woke up this morning feeling punky. And so I took an extra 20 minutes on the couch. I started this live stream 2 minutes late as a result of that, because of course, my mornings, I like to hit it hard. But sometimes when you don't feel right, you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself a second. And it's hard to decide oh, this is how I ruin my keyboard. I get too enthusiastic. So we'll just turn that off. Anyway, I get, sometimes you're like, hey, maybe I should just see if you don't put electricity through the thing that got wet, you're less likely to ruin the thing that got wet. This is why you watch the live stream, right? So you can see me spill my coffee on my keyboard. I just bought this freaking thing too, because I just did that to it like 2 weeks ago. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't too bad. Now I'm wearing coffee too. This is why I wear black, because if I wore white, there'd just be coffee streaks all up and down my clothes. I love John Willis's t-shirts, by the way, because they're all black. People wear black t-shirts. I did a green t-shirt once for one of mine, and that is over here. Yeah, Margot's saying, funky over here too. Rona in the house for the second time. I'll totally have a Rona update for you today. I got to clean up. Look, I do this so much, I keep a towel by my desk. I don't want to lean on that. Okay, well, there we go. Cleans up quick. It's like when you spill milk in your carpet or a drink in your carpet. Rule number 1 is get a towel and jump up and down on it, because it'll soak it up into the towel from the carpet. Anyway, guys, put your comments in all caps. Apparently, I'm not going to be typing to you because I decided to drench this keyboard in some coffee. It just got a few drips, but last time this happened, yeah, it's all up in there. Last time this happened, I ruined the keyboard. And I bought 2, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So I got to go find where I decided that it would be clever to store. Oh, it's right over there. Yeah, so there's another keyboard I'll have to set up, and then I have to pair it with the Bluetooth, and is what it is. This is my life. It's a messy life sometimes. Anyway, preparedness, Nicole. That's right, Tiger Paw. If you have questions you want me to get to as we do this live stream, of course, put them in first couple words, all caps. I'm going to star them and get back to them later. So we're going to do the podcast, and then I'll do Q&A afterwards. Of course, holler neighbors are welcome to join. I don't know if they will. If they do, they're probably going to come in here unless Tactical tells me to give them a link. We'll hear Jenny's update later in the podcast, of course. And now we're going to try this music thing. So I got to, oh, yeah. If you like these and you want to get notified about them, hit the subscribe button and the bell button and choose to the left. It'll give you a drop down, notify all. If you're already following these and you think somebody would benefit from what we're doing here at Living Free in Tennessee, send them this episode. I know it's a little bit chatty at the beginning, but that's just because what happens during the live stream is people come in at the beginning, and if I start the show, then I get complaints later like, I missed the first part of the show. So this is when we get our casual time, so to speak. And the Homestead update, I think, is something that people are beginning to really like, I guess, because stuff. Okay, let's start. Let me get my mic all set up. We're going to start this. I've got like this list of music. We can go. Yeah, that's not what we're looking for. Oh, there's night driving. If I were to listen to this at night driving, I would probably fall asleep. But anyway, let's do the podcast.
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, July 15th, 2022. This is episode 594 of Living Free in Tennessee. And today we have a Homestead update day. It's a Homestead happenings for July 15th. We've had a lot going on with Jenny moving out and the drought and the new livestock this year. And I always feel like July and August, things really come to a head and then it kind of lulls again. And then there's this whole, all the things need to be preserved at the end of the season. There's a cycle of that while I'm also speaking at all the fall events, because homesteading and preparedness events kind of take a break right now, except for the one we're doing in July. And then they all ramp up for the rest of the year. And then there's a whole bunch of deep winter ones, because the thinking there is that homesteaders are available in the winter to go to events. My personal thing about winter events is Hollow Roast Coffee starting in September through the end of the year. It's just like a lot of volume, more volume, Christmas rush sorts of stuff happening. So me leaving after October 1st is really hard to do because I'm working on the weekends too at those times. And then I don't know about other people, but it gets cold and freezes in the winter in Tennessee. Not all the time and not predictably. And then things were not built here for that, although we've been slowly making ourselves more freeze-proof. So there's always more work. I've got a wood stove to keep going to keep the house clean, warm. I've got water systems to keep from freezing. If they do break, I want to be here to fix them. We've got livestock that needs watering. And while we have some things in place, if the power goes out, which happens when an ice storm comes, for example, then we got to figure out how to get the animals watered. And we have ways to do that, but it's more labor intensive. So I find this tendency for these events to happen in the winter is actually really bad for me. It's probably really good for other people, but it is really bad for me. And that is what it is. So we're going to talk today about an update on the drought, because I don't know if it was last week or the week before, I was telling you all about the drought. We've got green bean palooza happening, succession planting in the garden, and what to do when you only get male squash flowers, because we're only getting male squash flowers right now. And then we have a hurt pig. So all of that's going to come up in this show. As I mentioned, for those on the live stream, please just put your questions with the first few letters in all caps. I was planning to monitor the Odyssey feed today. So if you're watching on Odyssey, I'm sorry. I just spilled coffee on my keyboard and now I can't get that up. So next week we will do that, but I have no keyboard at this time. So you just get my words and not my, my typey types. And in order to pull up Odyssey, I have to type odyssey.com and go to the video. And that is what it is. I wanted to mention before we jump into the Homestead update, Swale workshop tickets are almost sold out. I know I've been pushing this and it sounds like we have unlimited bandwidth. We don't. And here's why. The Swale workshop is July 30th and 31st, which is kind of a hot time during Tennessee's weather cycle. And so we're starting kind of early in the morning, like breakfast is at 6. and we'll probably start 6:37 out there on the swales. And then we want to end by 11 or 12 and go inside for air conditioned experience. We also have air conditioning available if you get hot, so you can go do a cool off break. There's more limited space in this workshop than, say, a Self-Reliance Festival, where it's all outside, and anybody who's been there has seen the big tent. And I could have brought one of those in, and I thought about it. I was like, let's do 300 people for the swale workshop. We'll have 3 instructors. We've got 3 swales that are going in. It'll work out perfectly, about 100 people per swale. And then I was like, 300 people is a lot to keep cool. And I was looking at doing class in churches nearby that have air conditioning. And finally, we just decided, here's what the heads count is going to be. Because of that, tickets are almost sold out. And the workshop's in 2 weeks. It actually looks like the weather's going to be pretty good. We might get rain, which would actually be nice. And then how are we going to, I don't know what I'm saying. Do you ever lose your train of thought in the middle of one of these? That totally just happened to me, and I'm just going to admit it. Anyway, the swale workshop. Oh, yeah. So at Self-Reliance Festival, it's like all of the space. And the swale workshop is limited space. So those tickets are up online. There's a link in the show notes if you want to sign up. $197 includes breakfast and lunch. Here's the menu. So breakfast I'll probably fry up some eggs and stuff for people while we're there, but we're going to have light breakfast like bagel-y and cream cheesy stuff because it's hot. And then we are going to have coffee from Hollow Roast Coffee and lots of water to keep cool. We want everybody to stay hydrated. Lunch on day 1 is fried chicken made by Chef Brett. There will be a coleslaw side. There will be a potato salad side. There will be chips and salsa and pork rinds and salsa for people who are keto. That's day 1. Day 2, same thing. Light breakfast, coffee, water. And then we will have lunch of a locally sourced country ham. It'll be served cold because it's hot. And then we're going to have a couple sides. I think one is some roasted mushrooms. And I can't remember what the other side is. It's going to be delicious. All of this is being done by Chef Brett. And it's all stuff that can serve cold so that we're not overheating on it. And then, of course, also chips and salsa probably on day 2, or potato chips or something for people who want extra carbs. So that's all coming together really well. If you don't eat pork, I have some really nice beef wraps that you can eat instead of the pork, and then the same side dishes. I wanted to make sure that the options were accommodating to different nutritional needs. I also have requested that the breading on the fried chicken not be wheat-based, so that if anybody has a gluten allergy, we just don't even have gluten anywhere in the thing. So that is all happening. It's the Swale workshop. So tickets are almost sold out. Get over to selfreliancefestival.com/swale, and that will take you there, or use the link that I will put in the show notes for this later. If you're on the live stream, you're just going to have to go there. And anyway, it's going to be a really good time. So get your ticket while you still can. Finally, if you want to email feedback to me, you can. Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. Hello, John Willis. Hey, John Willis is in the room. We're doing the Swale workshop at his place. Anyway, you can email it to me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. That is Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, our first segment is forage. This is where we talk about just kind of what we're getting from the land. And I've been a little this and here and there about if I put what we're harvesting from the garden in the grow section or the forage section. And I have a tendency to do more herbs and medicinals in this section. So here's where we're at. Echinacea finally bloomed, so it's time for us to collect that and dry it for winter tea use or for cold prevention. And something I've really, in the last decade or so, really latched onto is finding out what plants nearby can I make teas out of, or tinctures or whatever, that help with illnesses that just come through, seasonal illnesses like colds. So you'll hear later in the show, I'm going to talk about why we got mullein out and used it this week, because it was an issue of an illness coming through. So it's time to to harvest that. It is also seed saving times. If you grew broccoli or cauliflower or anything in that line and it put up a big shoot and made seeds and they dried on the stalk, you can harvest those seeds and replant them for next year. I noticed today that my dill seeds are dry I have dill heads. I have a big giant dill thing. It's awesome. It's the first time I've ever accomplished this in 15 freaking years. And now it's got seeds and it's bending over and dropping the seeds where I don't want it to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie little bags on those seed heads, and kind of shake them and then sprinkle some where that dill already is. And then I'm going to save some and I will start some inside for next year too, because dill is way too important for me to leave it to chance. But my long-term dream for this property has been to have one place where I complain about how the dill is taking over everything and I have to thin it. And it's a really sad time, right? Because my dill is just way too prolific. I really want that to happen on my hillside garden. And this year I successfully got the dill. So that's pretty cool. So those are the seeds I'm saving right now. I am going to be talking about which seeds we're saving when this year. My season is 2 weeks different from last year. I keep a journal on what happens when, and I got my first ripe tomato 2 weeks sooner last year than I did this year. And I don't have a lot of tomatoes coming on yet. When I get the prime specimen of each variety of tomato I grow, I will save those seeds. I will talk to you about how I save those seeds too. And that is what it is. So the next thing is that it is salve making time. If you have watched my thought of the walk from this week, I was on a walk and I saw jewelweed and I realized, it's time to make jewelweed salve, comfrey salve, plantain salve. I add peppermint to those because it makes it smell a little bit better. And it's sort of a tingly feeling on your skin, which is kind of nice. So it's salve making time. And that's what we're foraging here right now. There are other forages out there that we have not pulled out of the ground. And that is simply because I'm prioritizing the things that are most important to me right now. And comfrey is more important to me than some other things. And so is jewelweed because it's really helpful with the poison ivy rash that comes. It's also helpful to grow it where the poison ivy is under the hopes that it will block out the poison ivy. Our next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about what's happening with all the animals on the homestead. Well, not all of them this week, because a lot of what has happened in the last week is nothing much has happened. We haven't lost anybody. Nobody got sick. Well, we do have one that has an injury, but we have no ducklings yet. And I was expecting ducklings this week. And I looked down there. Some of the eggs look like they didn't make it now. And I'm hoping because the mama duck is super protective at this point. You don't want to be on the wrong end of a muscovy. Let's just put it that way. They're scary little critters. And a couple of the eggs looked pipped yesterday, which means that there's a little hole. And some of them looked like they have this like line and it's dark. And I'm not sure. So we're going to leave it another week because muscovies can take up to 5 weeks to hatch their babies. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to have to go in there and make the mama duck have a really bad day where we take all our eggs away and we go back to the drawing board and hope that we get some eggs. But when I had candled them a few weeks ago, I was able to identify which eggs were viable and which weren't. I got the ones that weren't. So I know that they were viable at one point. We also got really, really, really hot during this time. And I'm wondering if maybe that impacted the eggs. I don't know. But we will see. That's kind of how that works on the homestead. Our goal with the muscovies, though, is to get them reproducing, eat the males for meat, get more eggs. Muscovies work seasonally on eggs. I want to have, so the 3 muscovies I have right now, 4 muscovies. So is it 2 females and a male? No, 4, 3 females and a male. The muscovies I have right now they're not super excited about being handled. I'm hoping if we have babies, I can get my hands on them and make them a little bit more comfortable being handled because we need to clip their wings. So right now we have to catch grumpy birds with big, sharp nails to clip their wings every time they molt. And it's molting season. So the eggs have slowed down from my khaki Campbell ducks, and they are great at giving me 1 egg just about every day. So khaki Campbells are prolific egg layers. Muscovies lay eggs seasonally. And so that combination of both kinds of ducks means I have more ongoing egg production year round. I do slow down in the winter, and I slow down during the molt. And we have now gone down to 2 eggs a day from the khaki Campbells, which means it's about to look like all of my ducks got attacked and plucked by something. They're going to drop their feathers everywhere, and then they're going to look terrible. And then within 30 to 45 days, they will have grown their feathers back. Well, the Muscovies have clipped wings. And so when that happens to the Muscovies, I got to catch those critters again and clip their wings again so that they can't fly away, because they will actually fly. Like khaki Campbells will hop and sort of glide and then go somewhere, especially down a hill. They like to do that, but they don't fly off like a wild duck. Muscovies will do that. The thing about clipping wings is when they're growing the feathers, there's like blood inside that little hollow part of the feather. If you clip them when the feathers are that way, they will bleed to death unless you rip that feather out, which is painful. So we have to wait for the feathers to get long enough and the blood to retreat before we clip the feathers. And there are a number of YouTube videos out there on this, totally worth watching. I will tell you this. I knew theoretically how to clip wings when I had to actually do it. And the first time I've ever clipped any bird's wings was when we got these Muscovies. I watched 2 videos 3 times, went down and clipped Muscovy wings, and it was fine. But I'm really glad I had those videos to watch. I'm really glad I didn't have to learn this from how it's described in a book, because when I first started homesteading, YouTube wasn't really a thing, and you couldn't just go there and learn all this stuff and see how to do it. And I was doing everything from finding books at the library to finding people who wrote about it on their blogs on the internet, and they would have pictures, but there wasn't a lot of video. And man, YouTube University is awesome. It's going to be really sad to watch it disintegrate the way it has been disintegrating, as the censorship results in our not being able to find as much information on something like clipping duck wings as we want to. That's why I continue to invest some of my time in Odyssey, because it's the only other video platform that I've found that has the potential to be that archive. Now, TikTok would be possible. Like, they don't have the censorship issue, so I actually see stuff on TikTok, but the videos are short. And while I prefer somebody who comes up and just does a video, boom, this is how you do it, and doesn't mess around with backstory and history and all the other stuff. But, I know 60 seconds is the limit, and not everything can be taught in 60 seconds. I do know some people have longer videos there. So I think when you get over a certain number of followers, you must be able to have longer videos. I'm still learning TikTok. By the way, guys, I'm on TikTok. You know how you find me? Nicole Sauce. I think I'm Nicole Sauce LFTN. Yeah, that's probably who I am. Nicole Sauce LFTN for Living Free in Tennessee. Oh, my domain is available for sale, and I'm afraid to reach out to them. So right now, lftn.com is available for sale. I'm afraid if I reach out, the price is higher than if some rando reaches out. So if you're a rando who wants to reach out for me, I'm willing to buy that domain. I would love to have lftn.com instead of livingfreeintennessee.com. I get crap all the time for having the longest domain name in the world, but at least you can remember it. If you can remember the podcast name, you can remember how to get to there. You just have to type Tennessee is a really long state name, couldn't be like Living Free in Maine. Nope. Living Free in Tennessee with all the N's and the E's is what it is. Lady Pig has a foot injury. 2 days ago, she started limping on her front foot, and Tactical kind of felt down to see she had a sore spot and didn't find it, which means she's probably got something in her foot. And she's 600 pounds. I tell you this because if you are thinking about doing livestock and you're like, I want cows and I want pigs, and they're big. Not all pigs are big. You can get American guinea hogs and some other breeds that are smaller. They take longer to grow out. I actually think they're a great homestead breed. I have raised them here. They take longer to grow out. They cost more. They taste delicious. And they are smaller and easier to handle. being on the wrong end of a 150-pound pig is not fun. Like, now multiply that by 6. Bigger is harder, as Tactical is saying right now in the comments. Bigger is harder. I don't know what I didn't discuss during morning coffee, but whatever. So now we have to deal with this situation. Lady Pig is fairly friendly, but when she gets mad, she's 600 pounds of mad. And when animals are hurt and you like get the place where they're hurt, that's 600 pounds of hurt and mad. And she has sharp teeth. And she can move actually pretty fast for a 600-pound critter. And Tactical doesn't weigh 600 pounds. He doesn't weigh anywhere near 600 pounds. I'm not even sure he weighs 100 pounds. Anybody who's met him will laugh at that. So now we have to figure out how to deal with this foot. And what we know is we definitely want 2 people there in case something goes wrong. And then hopefully we'll be able to find out what's wrong with her foot and not have to tranquilize her or something. Now, some people will give the animal a couple of beers to get them to relax. Lady Pig's a mean drunk. If you give her a couple of beers, she gets more mean. Like we actually tried that. We were like, well, let's give her a beer and see what happens the day before we neutered her baby boys, because we knew she was going to be protective of that and they were going to squeal. And she started flipping her babies. So we decided maybe we don't get that pig drunk. So I don't know how this is going to resolve. I'll tell you next week. But we need to look at her foot. We need 2 people there prepared to deal with the situation if it gets out of hand. And hopefully it won't. Hopefully she'll just be like, I know you're just pulling. I think she probably has a thorn in there or something. That's what I'm hoping. I hope she doesn't have a sprain or something more serious. But we don't know until we look. And Letty's like, hey, got any hoof trimmers in the area? Probably. I don't know. I know that sometimes you have to trim the hooves of pigs just like you do. Like, it's probably time for us to take a good look at the sheep hooves as well. I have trimmers for those. So I trim the goat hooves. Well, on one of the goats. And she doesn't love it. But if you give her a treat to eat, she'll just be like, fine, you can trim my hooves, whatever. And that's how you want your animals to be. So what I have learned about livestock is that the more they will let you handle them, like hanging out with them and handling them is good, even though you develop a closer relationship with them. And this is an animal you are processing for food. It makes it easier to process them for food from a logistics standpoint, maybe not from an emotional standpoint, but it also makes it easier when they're hurt to deal with them because they trust you more. And if they're used to having their feet messed with, for example, like dogs, if they're used to having their feet messed with, if there's a problem, you don't have to like go to the vet, put them under just to deal with a foot problem. And that's something I like. I mess with my dog's feet all the time for that reason. So they're just used to it. Because a lot of animals don't want you touching their feet. They just don't. And so you want to get them over that a little bit. The sheep are becoming more of a rhythm and a like part of the homestead habit. And this is why we talk about start one thing or 2 animals and then get that into your homestead rhythm or your homestead habits. So it's part of your homestead maintenance plan. So it's like, okay, I get up, I do this, I do sheep, I blah, blah, blah. And you go and you do your day and then you come back and sure, there are special projects for the new thing, but it's not like, what is next? Oh my gosh, we need a different watering solution. This thing I read about doesn't work. Like there's all of that. No matter how much research you do, you start something new and it doesn't work the way the people said it would work who do it all the time. And that's because it works differently on your land than it works on their land. And so anytime you add another thing to maintain, it takes a while of figuring out what really works for you, for your land, for the infrastructure you have, adding infrastructure you may need. And then it becomes a homestead habit. And you're like, wow, why was that so hard the first few months? Well, we've made that with the sheep now. And that's good because at first there was a lot of like almost all day, every day Tactical has spent with those sheep. And then it went down to half days. And still when we put a new pasture up, which is almost every day or every other day, put the fencing up for that, it takes a lot of time. Well, once they've grazed through, it takes less time because I don't have a lot of tall stuff in the way. So that's making it easier. And then just better relationship with the sheep. They'll follow us now. They didn't really like us at first. They were like, you're not who we're used to. We don't want to follow you. Like all of those things are getting easier with them. We may breed the rabbits this week, but we're keeping our eye on the temperature because it's fallen in temperature for a few weeks now. It's more like June weather in July. And that means that the males are potentially fertile again. And if that's true, then we are going to breed the females. We're probably going to expand the genetics, though, and put her in with our next door neighbor's buck instead of our buck, just to get a little bit more variety. That's very important, I think, in when you're breeding animals, to think about the genetics and inbreeding and what that can do. And then it is fodder harvest time. It has been fodder harvest time since it's like late spring to midsummer. We're hitting midsummer. I've got mulberry to harvest. I've got box elder to harvest. I've got willow to harvest. And we need to decide if we're doing silage or drying it. I don't know the answer to that question. What I know is we're going to figure it out this year. We're going to have a small fodder tree harvest this year, because we just put them in. And then I found any tree on my property or surrounding areas that it qualifies as a fodder tree, like wild mulberries. And we have a bunch of willow here instead of the hybrid willow that Nick has. I planted poplar, but they're just like whips right now this year, but they're doing well. And we're going to go around, get that. And then box elder, the animals I have can eat it. Not all animals can eat that. And so you want to just look that up. But my goats love it. The sheep will eat the crap out of it. They actually really like privet too. I don't know if that's fodder tree. I don't know how it stores, but they eat a lot of privet here. Also, we have less privet here. So we are going to get that going and then figure out if we're drying it or doing silage. I'll probably do a combination because I want to see if the rabbits will eat silage and if the ducks will eat silage. So I'm probably going to make some silage. Silage is when you harvest your fodder trees, and then you're not cutting the tree down, right? You're cutting branches off. So what I do is I pollard them. I cut them at about 5 to 6 feet tall. Then they put out new growth, and I harvest those whips. And then we're going to grind those up, ferment them, and see who will eat the fermented silage, just out of curiosity. And James, who we bought the sheep from, says, for sheep, setting up the future pasture ahead of time saves a lot of time, but it's all part of learning curve, and it sounds like tactical has things in hand. Yeah. We like having 2 to 3 places for them ready to go is really helpful, because you think you know how long they're going to be somewhere. This is what we've learned about sheep. And then you're like, wow, they ate all that. Or why haven't they eaten all that? Right. So it's just kind of, they go at their pace. It is what it is. And then, of course, we've been giving them hay a little bit every day. They like that. They like hay treats a lot. And it's good to give your animals treats. So that's everything going on with the livestock. Next segment is Grow. This is where we talk about what's up in the garden. Blueberry Palooza happened last week. So my friend has a blueberry farm nearby. Her husband died, and she's no longer harvesting and selling the blueberries. And so she has a few people. She says, hey, come get whatever blueberries you want. So I went out there last week. I got 4 Harvest Right freeze dryer loads full of blueberries to freeze dry. And freeze dried blueberries are delicious. Now I know. I didn't do that last year. And then I've been eating them fresh with every dinner. It's like just a handful every day. Have a fridge. Like I have a gallon of them still in the fridge. And that's from last Monday. They're doing fine. I'll probably freeze those. I was going to give them to Michelle, who helps me with the roasting company, but she forgot to take them. So now I need to decide if Michelle and I are having a meetup on Saturday at the farmer's market where she can get these blueberries. I've been thinking about going out back over there tonight and maybe harvesting some and selling them at the farmer's market as like some quick side income and giving some money back to my friend who owns the farm. We'll see if I really make time for that, because I also have green bean harvest number 1.0 is ready. That's right. I've been getting little dribs and drabs of green beans off the garden. The drought was terrible on my green beans. They just didn't. The plants stayed alive, but the fruit didn't happen. And then it rained. And then I got little teeny green beans, and they grew really slowly. So then some of them are ready and some aren't. As of yesterday, last night, when I did just a garden walkthrough, I noticed that it was time to harvest the green beans, but I decided to wait one more day because I wanted to do some other things around the house and in the garden And so today we're harvesting green beans, and it will be the first time I have enough green beans to do preservation with. And so the big question this week is simply dilly beans or canned beans. Dilly beans or canned beans. That's the decision. Dilly beans, canned beans. I'll probably do dilly beans. If there aren't a ton of them, like if there's like a quarter bushel, I'll probably do dilly beans because that's a good canner load of dilly beans. If there's a half bushel, I'll probably do canned. So that's coming together. I'm very excited about it. I celebrated this week knowing that Green Bean Palooza was coming on by planting more green beans. So succession planting is in your garden. When something's kind of done, you pull it out and you want to have something else coming up. Now, I harvested potatoes this week and garlic the week before. And those are both crops that come out of the ground, and there's a lot of ground destruction or disruption when they come out. And so what I don't do with potatoes or garlic is plant something before I harvest them. Other things like green beans, in another month under my green bean, which are bush beans, which are kind of shading the ground, I can start putting kale or broccoli starts or things. I can start transplanting little plants under there, and they get shade from the green beans, and then it's time to pull the green beans out, and then they can come into their own as a fall garden crop. Well, this week I took the potatoes out, and that disturbed the whole thing. And so I took the opportunity to smooth it out, and then I reseeded green beans. This time of year, it's hard to germinate stuff though, because it's so hot. And if you get something germinating and up and it dries and the ground dries out, then it dies because it doesn't have a root structure yet. So you need to, we need to water regularly in something like that where we're reseeding, right? So that succession planting is happening, and it is time to start broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage starts and Swiss chard starts for putting in your fall garden. Some people get another wave of squash, so they'll start their squash inside now and put it out in September. Between now and September, it's usually too hot for all of those things. So you start your seedlings inside, and then you'll move them outside in September and baby them through September a little bit because it'll be a little hot here and there. And then hopefully they're there long enough to give you something in the fall before the freeze knocks them out. Although broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage are totally frost-friendly plants, right? It's just squash, tomatoes, things like that are not as happy. But there's still enough time in Tennessee to plant a second planting of potatoes. You'll probably get some. Or start squash and put it out. But squash does not like it hot. Speaking of squash, I have all male flowers on my squash plants. You know why? There are just a few reasons why this will happen. So male flowers don't have the fruit on it. Female flowers have the fruit. In order for the fruit not to just fall off and rot, it needs the male flower to pollinate it. The life cycle of a squash plant, it will put out male flowers first to attract pollinators, and then the female flowers come out, and hopefully they're there together, right? And then pollination happens. You get summer squash, zucchini, those sorts of things. Or I'm growing Tramonchino and Cushaw squash too for winter squash. Well, by this time in the summer, I'm getting squash until the squash vine borers come and kill them, which happens really soon now. But I only have male flowers. If it's over 92, 93 degrees, you only get male flowers. So what you need to do is grow your squash inside in an air-conditioned building. So we had an early heat. I think that's why I'm only getting male flowers. I'm hoping because we dropped down, and it takes about 10 days. We drop down in temperature that they will come back out with some nice female flowers. So we get some yellow squash and some zucchini. I've grown one zucchini and one yellow squash so far this year. And then we have the other reason that can happen is too much nitrogen in your soil. I don't think that's the problem this year based on the state of the colors of the leaves of the other plants. We are totally getting a ton of cucumbers. Like the minute the oven got turned down, the cucumbers started going crazy. So that's great. And then tomatoes, I've gotten 1 pound of tomatoes so far this year. The tomatoes are not ripening very quickly. I'm looking at them out my window right now, and they look big and beautiful and green. So what that means is during the Swale workshop, they're all going to get ripe when I'm not here to pick them. That's the plan. And then I'll come home and hopefully my house sitter will have put them in the freezer so I can can them. But this time of not as hot has been good for the tomatoes too, because fruit set doesn't happen over 95 degrees on tomatoes, and sometimes 93 degrees. And so that means you get the flowers, but not the fruit. And we had a total cycle of that in June, which is about the worst time. I think that's part of why my tomatoes crop is late this year, is that we had a fruit set pause. But I have a lot of fruit out there, and I'm looking forward to getting more fresh tomatoes. And the hydro systems are doing great. I have some up in the garden. I haven't had a big blight problem this year. I also haven't had much rain this year. I've had a little bit of blight in the upper garden, but I planted aspirin with them. So who knows? Yeah, James says Tromboncino are amazing. They are. They're great. They get really long if you trellis the vines too. So Jack and I have an undeclared competition on who can grow the longest Tromboncino. I think I won one year and he won the other, but it's undeclared. We just were like, here's my squash. It's fun to have friendly competition with people now, isn't it? So let's get an update on the rain. It rained. When the rains came through that I told you was like the week of blight we always get in July, it did not rain. So it rained all around me as if there was an umbrella over the holler specifically, like 1 mile radius around us, no rain at all. And then when nobody else around me was getting rain, we started getting rain. So now we've had 4 or 5 inches of rain, right? And that means that things are looking better. There is no replacement for rain. Everything's looking more vibrant. I now have a weed problem again because the weeds are growing, the grass is growing. The sheep are going to be really happy about this because we've been running sprinklers to grow the stuff for the sheep. Like, that's how bad it got. And hopefully that will continue. As I said yesterday, I was over at Jenny's, like visiting because she's getting ready to move. And I was going to walk home, and all of a sudden, all I heard was like, and I got a shower on my way home, a free shower from nature. It was great. So the drought for us is behind us, but other parts of the state are still having us. And if we go, from now till September with no rain, it'll be another problem of me complaining about not having much rain. And Aaron says, getting some much needed rain here. Good. I'm glad to hear that, because there's nothing like rain. Other than that, we are putting rabbit poop, some moldy feed that we have, wood chips, and a tarp up where the garlic patch is, so it can be ready for planting in the fall or maybe even next spring. It just depends on how much planting we have, because I'm doing succession planting in the garden this year. I don't usually maintain that upper garden, but with all of the rumors of food shortages and whatnot, I decided my thing with inflation is it helps me to have more food here than to buy the food. And so I 4x'd my food growing this year when I started looking at the inflationary figures that were coming in and what things look like. I just figured, like, I'm not going to be sad to have homegrown beans instead of buying them from a farmer in my jars, right? And it's just a few dollars in seeds and then some time. And that's why I started doing the Garden 30. And that's why I'm maintaining that upper garden. And, I have missed doing that garden. The reason I wasn't is I didn't want to give that time to it. What I wanted to do was spend time growing the coffee business. And for me, that was a trade-off. And I just concentrated on my aquaponics growing areas and near the house growing areas and the hydro systems near the areas, and didn't do the upper garden, which is not in my zone 1. So the garden space is not in my zone 1. It was here when I moved here. It's there because it's there, right? It's not a strategic choice. And I was telling Tactical yesterday, I'm like, I have to go consciously take a walk to go look at that every day. That's why the Garden 30 is so great, because then I go up there, right? I'm not walking by it to get anywhere every day. And I went up there and I said, the bad thing about the location of this garden space is that it is not where the garden space should be from a permaculture design standpoint, from a zoning standpoint. But the good thing about that garden is it gets a lot of shade. So while other people in the drought have been, or the unusually early, hot area, And thanks for the super chat, Mike. I appreciate that. Really appreciate it. And I'm happy to do these updates. It gets a lot of shade. And in the winter, the leaves fall off the trees. And so it gets a lot of sun. So it's actually from a standpoint of where you want to put a vegetable garden, from how the land is, not from where my house is. It's actually a pretty good spot. And that's why I can be up there at 4:30 in the afternoon in the shade. Now, my last garden 30, what happened, and the reason it just cut off, is my phone got too hot because I was doing it early. I was doing it at 2 in the afternoon, and the sun was hitting my phone, and I kept putting a thing over the phone, and it kept just blowing off. I need to find a way to shade my phone out there if we're going to do that again. And when your phone gets hot, you know what it does? It shuts off resource intensive apps. Do you know what the resource intensive app is? YouTube. So that just totally cut it out. But in the afternoon, it's shady. And that means, starting at 4:30 at this time of year, it shades. And I can go up there and work in it. And then we're good to go, right? Then, it's hot. It's hot. It's less hot in the morning. And the sun doesn't hit it first thing in the morning either where it is. But it's less hot in the morning. But for me, from a time management standpoint, I prefer to do the homesteading stuff in the afternoon if I can, because I want my mental faculties really sharp in the morning for my money time. Because mornings are for money, right? It's for making content. It's for marketing things. It's for roasting and shipping coffee. It's for new ideas. It's for event management stuff, right? That's mostly what I'm doing in the morning, forging new relationships with people, that sort of thing. So having that garden space be shady has been really helpful. And it's part of why we've recovered so quickly with this rain, because it's not just burning off, right? And that's really important, especially when you talk about I'm germinating bean seeds. I might actually put up some little posts on this row. If, like, right now we have rain the next couple of days on and off. Perfect for seed germination. Not going to be super hot. But if it looks like we're going to get another 4 or 5 days of just sun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang up some shade cloth over that stupid thing and then have to water it, because I really want those seeds to come up. And then once they're up and properly mulched in and looking good, then we'll just let it go with the normal garden cycle. But with the succession planting, that's what's happening. So I know you guys heard me say drought roughly 15 billion times a couple episodes ago. Now we're out of the drought for now. And the streams have water and the ponds have water. And so I put my finger in the garden yesterday on my garden walkthrough, and I was like, another 2 days, we're going to need to water this if it doesn't rain. And then it rained last night. So we're golden. We're golden right now. Mulch is your friend, by the way. Mulch is your friend. Next segment is Holler Community, Holler Neighbors, and we're saying goodbye to Jenny. That's right. We're saying goodbye to Jenny. She is loading up her stuff and driving to her new location. And it's sad and it's hard to watch. And she's going to be missed. But once a holler neighbor, always a holler neighbor. And I haven't shared with her much about my emotions about her leaving, because I don't want to put my stuff on her, but I'm going to miss her. It's actually, I've lived in this holler with a lot of men around me. It was really great to have a female. I know gender doesn't matter, but sometimes it matters, because we could just talk about stuff and, feelings. I'm going to stereotype a little bit here. Talk about feelings, and it wasn't like the following answer. So we laugh about that all the time. So we're going to miss her, but I'm excited for her new opportunity. It sounds like a really good one. So with that, the base camp update, I talked to you last week about we're going to be Airbnb-ing that month at a time. It's going to be furnished. That's all happening. Somebody heard me say that, and they reached out to me, and they're selling their house. And then they are going to need to land somewhere while they find a new house. And they have some, some poultry and some other stuff. And we talked to them yesterday. It looks like they're going to move in for a few months soon. So we've already got some months covered. That's going to be awesome. And it's somebody who I'm looking forward to get to know better. There's somebody who we already knew in person, who's been to a few events and gotten to know us a little bit. So that's really helpful for me to make that decision. It's a little easier than just, I've never met you. And that means that you guys should come to my open house on August 6th, where we are going to have a potluck gathering here Saturday. And we'll be working on a project. The planned project is showing, Tactical is going to be installing perimeter electric so that he can just tap into one wire and not have a gajillion chargers for the rotational fencing that's happening with the sheep. I'm probably going to be canning something. It's casual. I will have hours out soon, but probably, 9 o'clock in the morning till 12 or 1. We're just going to do an open house for people who want to meet us, kind of check this out. We started doing these last year and it became too much for me to handle because my weekends are my only, like, quote unquote downtime. I get a lot of concentrated food preservation or canning time or alone time to really think about stuff on the weekends while not creating content. Because when you create content, it actually takes a lot of mental preparation. And, sometimes I need to take time for me is what it is. So I do still work on the weekends, but being around people all the time is hard for me. I like people, but sometimes I need to be people free. And then somebody approached me who wants to learn, who's new to homesteading, has a homestead, just starting out, wants to apprentice here for a week or two, just to learn some very specific things so they can take that home to their homestead. And right now is perfect because base camp is going to be empty. And as long as they don't mind us coming in and we have some things we want to trim out and some work we want to do in there, but nothing crazy, they can stay there and apprentice here. I don't know if they're going to, but we're probably going to have them do that and just go over some of the things they want to learn, and they can see how you remember when I was talking about homestead habits earlier, like you start livestock and it's a big crazy mess, and then you end up developing habits with maintaining these and you have systems in place. Well, we have that now with the sheep. And so it's a really good time because it's still fresh in our minds what it was like before the habits of the sheep were for this person to come learn about the sheep. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I get to know that person better too. Also have met them in person already. So I get a lot of questions about how I keep, I want to volunteer on somebody's homestead and everybody just kind of ignores me. It's because when you contact us and we've never met you, we don't know who you are. We don't know how well you work. If we don't have an internship screening program going already, it's often more work to show people things than to just do it yourself. And so then when we get to know people and have a relationship, understand their work ethic, it's still going to be more work than if we just do it ourselves. But then we're like, okay, this person will take the information and do something with it. And that's really important when you're investing that kind of time in somebody. So those are just two community developments I thought I'd share with you that are cool. And then the third thing is COVID. COVID has landed back in the holler. We had COVID come through here in late January, early February. 2 of us went down. And then after that, another holler neighbor we think got it, but we didn't test, but the symptoms were there. That same holler neighbor got really, really, really sick on Saturday. And usually I don't go into homes that have viral load because I'm careful about that. Because when I get sick, I get very respiratory sick and sometimes it turns into pneumonia. And the thing with COVID is it's been a respiratory illness that turns into pneumonia. So I'm trying not to get pneumonia as a general rule. Life goals. Well, it made most sense for me to go in. And so I went in and I'm feeling fairly strong because I've had it. So my immunity is feeling strong. And the neighbor was so sick that I was like, I'm wondering if we're going to the hospital later. And I was hoping we wouldn't. So totally worth me going in. And we did the test. It was like, yep, you have it. And not surprised because that neighbor's symptoms are different than mine, but it kind of mimicked what they did. Then we talked to a doctor who we work with who is open to treating COVID in ways that not everybody approves of, but based on his clinical experience, he's like, this one has worked, and I think, and this one hasn't. And he's treated a lot of patients with COVID. Talked to him, got the vitamin regimen going, got some of the other symptoms under control. And then that took a lot. So it was kind of like we initiated the holler neighbor quarantine thing where I got exposed to it to help the person who needed help. We quarantined him. I am now a dedicated person who goes in because I'm the only one who's been exposed. And I'm being careful around other neighbors, like talking to them outside and stuff. And this would be the same with strep throat or the flu, right? It's not COVID specific. And then they helped by acquiring things offsite that we might want on site, and got his symptoms to where we weren't worried about taking him to the emergency room. And then, cooked food, got the person to the point where we could do the sort of a handoff. We have this way, if it's like your tray is outside your door, here's some chicken soup or whatever, and they recovered really fast. So that was good. So far, none of the rest of us have gotten anything. I have been under the weather this week, though, like I'm fighting a cold, but never getting a cold. So I have been careful. I get this anyway, though. Like when I work really hard, what happens is I work until I hit a wall, and then I feel sick for a day or two, and then I catch back up with myself and I'm fine. So we've been really, really disciplined about our vitamins, but that's been the community approach to illness here. Last segment, or no, it's not the last segment. Next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're putting in. We're not putting in a lot right now. We're not. We're doing that August 6th open house. It's going to be from, I've decided on this podcast, it's going to be from 9 a.m. because I'm going to the farmer's market before we have the open house. That's why 9 a.m. So, and don't show up early. Don't show up early. 9 a.m. If you get here at 8 because you came from an Eastern time zone and I'm in the Central time zone, and you're like, oh crap, it's 8. Go hang out at the marina for an hour. Don't come early. 9 a.m. till like everybody out by 1. I'll probably be canning something or drying something or preserving something. Tactical is planning to do the fencing demo. We'll recommunicate closer, because if the weather's weird, we might not do that fencing demo. It just depends. But we're always doing something on Saturdays. And then the other infrastructure issue I have is I have a trailer full of tractor tires. We pulled tractor tires out of the yard that were in use as a retaining wall by the person who built this property, and replaced them with stone from the property to have a stone retaining wall. And so I have all these kind of half-rotted tractor tires. They're not good enough for a CrossFit gym, and we have been trying to get rid of them. Recycle them, pay somebody a fee to take them. Nobody will take them. So if anybody in Tennessee knows what I need to do with tractor tires besides come up with my own solution, I would love to be able to just pay, like you do with car tires. You pay like $6 a tire, and they go into the recycle world, and it's all like the transfer station won't take them. Nobody will take them. So just throwing that out there. Or if you want a retaining wall made out of half-rotted tractor tires, I totally got like 5 of them here that need to go. Might be 4. Don't know. Don't they make Birkenstocks out of tires? Like, isn't that what the soul? I'm just saying. Anyway, that's something we'll be figuring out, and I'll let you know when I find a solution. I haven't actually put my mind to finding a solution because we've had a lot going on. Last segment of the day is finances. This is where we talk about the finances of a homestead. Inflation is hitting us too, guys. Stuff's getting more expensive. Am I going to complain about that? No. Does it impact how we make decisions? Yes. I just wanted to say that because one of the cool things about running my own business was when COVID hit, it was like nothing really happened here, because I just lived my life the way I lived my life. I didn't go out for a while into the real world because I didn't know how bad it was. And I was like, well, let's stay home and grow my plants and take care of my animals and stuff and do my podcast and ship my coffee. Well, and then I didn't have shutdowns and no job because I made my own job. I did have a financial hit from it because there was a point where we just had 0 sales for a while, but we got through that too. And it was just a choice for us. And in some ways, it's not bragging. It's just in some ways you feel a little guilty about it, because I know people who like lost their job for over a year if they didn't leave the cities they were in that were shutting them down. That's a long time to not work. That's a long time to not have income. I know people who lost businesses. I know people who lost houses. And that was great for me that I didn't lose those houses or lose a house or anything. Well, inflation's hitting now. And, they say the consumer price index is 9%, I think is the latest thing. It was 8% last month, 8% the month before. And I don't know how to do the math on this because I haven't looked at how they calculate CPI. But it's not, you don't add those things and say it's, 30% or 25% inflation. But there is, like CPI target is 2%. So we're looking at months where it's higher by a certain percentage. And this is comparing, this month to the same month a year ago. That is the timeline for that. And some things in our lives that are not included in the CPI are even more inflated than they were. I mean, I can tell you from the coffee production standpoint, my source, my green beans are more than double right now. And that doesn't mean I need to double my coffee prices because that's just one piece of what goes into roasting coffee. And labor is another piece. And electricity is another piece, right? Shipping is another piece. Shipping's going up. But I just wanted to say that, talk about inflation a little bit because it's hitting us too. And when you own your own business, the cool thing is we can use that mechanism by working harder, smarter, and really focusing to get more income, which helps control for inflation. But that does not mean that I did not have the following conversation yesterday with Tactical about money, specifically related to homestead things, where homesteading has really kept my costs down from it's shielded me from inflation a lot because my food does not cost money that's grown here. It doesn't cost money. Except if I buy feed for animals, that costs money. If I buy seeds, those cost money, right? But a lot of what we're doing here is focused on not needing to buy external inputs as much as possible to get things that we eat. And then it takes my time. Canning jars cost money, lids cost money. Electricity is up 2 cents a kilowatt hour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was about $10. About $10. I mean, I don't know if it was $10 also because I was using more because it was hotter in June, but it's about $10 more. That's not bad, right? That's not insurmountable, but we notice it. And I said, well, I do money in the morning, Tactical. So let's have a talk about money. How's it going? Because we have different budgets, right? Different households, but we share in the bounty of the homestead, which keeps costs down. And he's like, a little tight this month. And I was like, me too. Let's talk about why. And so we started talking about why. And we came up with some things we can do to bring more money in on the homestead. Just some ideas to try. Like I could go sell blueberries at the farmer's market tomorrow if I want to. And we also talked about, is there a place where we've just been sort of careless with our choices that makes sense within the rhythm of what we do here to bring a cost down? And we talked about some ideas there too, things that can be made more efficient. Now, should I be having those efficiency discussions all the time? Yes. Do I? No. I'm human. I get into like, I don't want to put time in that. And so I just sort of spend more money or I use more water or whatever during those times. And so we've had those discussions too. I'm sharing that with you so that you know that I know that it's not easy to get over some of these higher price tags. But you know what? It is surmountable if you start thinking about how you're going to, don't think poverty mindset. How can I make this thing the cheapest possible? You still need to look at the long term. How do I have assets, like big picture, how do I have assets that go up with inflation so that I'm a little bit protected from it? And right now, real estate, it's probably going to crash, but real estate, historically over time, real estate kind of tracks with inflation, which is helpful if you own your property. If you don't, you need to buy it. Then you need to think, okay, I want to buy property. How can I set things up so I have enough money to buy property in a time when it's inflating? If you save money now and real estate crashes sometime in the next year or two, you're well positioned to buy it. And that's really cool. That's really cool. So, I'm just bringing that up So you think about inflation long term rather than my jar of spaghetti sauce just doubled in price, because it probably has. And that hurts. I understand that hurts, but you can surmount this. And the first thing to think about is long term, what do we need to do? Short term, are there little things we can do to increase the income or decrease some of these things that we don't necessarily need to spend money? Like maybe you do what we do here, and that is when somebody's already in town, they will check to see if others of us want something from in town, so we don't have 3 cars going to town and back. We have 1 car going to town and back. It uses less gas. Stuff like that works in our community. I don't know. Like I've always been in the habit of when I go to town, I do as many errands as possible because I don't want to spend that much time in my car. That's why I work from home. I don't have to commute. Huge benefit to working at home. So that's just sort of when I talked about finances, I was like, it's not so much about what are we selling off the homestead this week. It's more about like, how are we approaching this just what are we thinking about inflation? And what we're thinking is we're going to add a few more income generating things or get more income from the things we have. And the second thing is we too are looking at like, maybe we need to push down in some areas, like grow more of our own feed for our livestock rather than buy feed for our livestock, which is what we've already been going that direction. I'm actually going to get off my butt and harvest the fodder stuff this year, which I probably, had this not happened, I'd probably been like, yeah, it doesn't matter that much. And so that's all of our content for the Homestead update today. I did star a lot of questions that y'all have put in all caps as we were going, and we will handle those questions on the live feed after we conclude the podcast. And then of course I invite Holler Neighbors to join at this time as well. I hope you're really enjoying these updates and you're getting a lot out of them. I know I get a lot out of them, just from watching what you all have to say, like Chuck's canning peppers this weekend with your Presto. Oh, I'm so jealous. I want a Presto electric canner so bad. I'm jealous. You have a better electric canner than I do, Chuck. Anyway, that's cool though. Like you start canning stuff and you tap into high times of bounty and then you preserve it. That's a habit that's great on a homestead. Anyway, with that, guys, go out, make it a great week. And yes, we are staying live, but I had to give that long. Oh, wow. You're making background noise, Tactical. I'm putting you on mute right now until I talk to you. So I think the problem with you joining on your phone instead of a computer, by the way, is that the cell phones make more background noise on live streams. I don't know why. I think maybe it's the speakers closer to the mic, but I will unmute you. So now we're into the Q&A time, guys, on the live stream, and I have a number of questions. If you want me to see your question and it's not coming up, go back and look if you put it in all caps for the first 2 or 3 words. And if you didn't, drop your questions in. And if you think of a question while we're talking, like we're now on until you're done with us, right? Is what it is. Not called Holler Coffee for nothing. See, he put all caps. I prefer them at the beginning, but he was making a point. So Tactical, I'm gonna unmute you and just ask you, like, what do you want to share with everybody before I start with the first question? How's it going on the?
Oh, did I just cut out, or did you just cut out? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, there you go. I don't know. The background noise you just heard was the ducks, so don't blame me on that one. Probably has something to do with the fact that I'm outside, but yeah, I mean, things are starting to smooth out a little bit. The sheep are kind of in a good rotation now, and they've pretty much cleared out all of the really heavy stuff. So the sections where I've still got to clear to put the electric in for them isn't anywhere near as heavy. It's still going to take a little bit of time, but everything that I try to do here is to make things easier in the future. It just takes a little bit more work now. So we pretty much got through that with them. So hopefully there's a couple of sections where I'm working on clearing out a little bit more of just the nuisance stuff. And then we can start going back in once the grass starts to come back up and planting whatever we want. Trees, bushes, shrubs, flowers, whatever.
Yeah, you know, last early spring this year. Uh-oh. We got a 911 out of Dallas. Send me coffee down to the last jar. You went through more coffee. Have you been drinking more coffee, David? You've been drinking more coffee because I have you on a schedule, but I will send your coffee today. I will send you 2 packages. So 1 package can go out today because I actually just roasted coffee for you. So that was good timing. Anyway, it's interesting how homestead habits become habits. Do you really feel like the sheep are habits at this point for you?
We're getting there, yeah. I mean, I guess it didn't take long to develop the habit, but a lot of the sections that were, I mean, there were some sections where we rotated them through where the brush was so thick, they would eat everything on the outside, and then I would have to go in with a pair of hand shears and a sawzall to trim off a lot of the old growth so they could get to the stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
And so getting through all of that, now the habit's just really becoming a lot more efficient. And I also was able to work out, like, specifically, okay, dragging an electric wire around sucks. Trying to work on some kind of, like, a used electrical spool sucks. The reels are nice, and then I actually got my hands on a couple of the geared reels and was like, oh my God, this is so worth paying double the money.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody's saying, how do I purchase your coffee, Nicole? You go to Holler, HOLLER, roast, ROAST.com, and that's how you purchase it. It's all there, hollerroast.com. A lot of people start with the Holler Roast House Blend, which if you click on the buy coffee link, it's like the first one. That's our most popular one, and it's a good starting point just to see where you want to go flavor wise. And then we have some varietals. So thank you for asking that question. If anybody wants to buy coffee, it's at hollerroast.com. Okay, we had a really important question for you, Tactical. Martinson family wants to know, what do you have to do to have such a great beard?
I don't know. My hair is not really conducive to being long. This has been the same length for like 2 years. So it's just kind of growing in mass at this point in time. So I'm pretty sure if I couldn't take a 50 cal round and this just stop it, at least a 12 gauge. It'll stop at 12 gauge.
Hey, can I do shooting practice this weekend?
I guess we could.
I kind of want to. I haven't done shooting practice recently, and I'm like, I need to shoot some guns.
Yeah, preferably not around the pigs.
Right. Also not. Okay, K-Bonk wants to know, how often are you getting freezing times? You live near Knoxville. I don't live near Knoxville. I'm about 2.5 hours from Knoxville. And so the Cumberland Plateau is up and a little bit colder, and then Nashville's down in a valley. I'm kind of between those two things. So we'll get a week or 2 of freezing usually every year, and it'll come here and there, days, but maybe 3 or 4 days at a time it stays below freezing all day, and then it will go down below freezing at night for a month. But then we have other years. So where we are north to south is, if warm pushes up from the Gulf, then it doesn't freeze. And if cold pushes down from the north, then it does freeze. And we're right on this line. So one year it'll be a flipping cold winter, and another year it'll hardly freeze at all. And we'll have like super early spring. And I am within 10 miles of 3 zones. And so what I do is I practice plant roulette or seed roulette, where I will plant things early. I will be prepared to plant things late, all of it, because it's just, you just never know. Like this year we had a really late spring, like really cool spring that went long. And then it got hot as hell. So this year I actually did pretty darn well with broccoli and cauliflower compared to how we usually do. Like my doing well with broccoli and cauliflower isn't like the farmers who, throw a bunch of 7 on it and grow it in their fields. But, I have 4 or 5 plants and we actually got some. Usually it's like we get broccoli greens and cauliflower greens, but we do not get broccoli heads and cauliflower heads. So that was pretty fun. Okay, next question. Fried chicken cooked in lard. This is a relationship to the Swale workshop. Is the fried chicken going to be cooked in lard? You know what? That's a great question. And I'm going to ask Brett that question and I will let you know. But actually, if he says no, I might just give him lard and then it can be. Because it would not be, I've got a ton of lard. He can totally fry it in lard. There's no reason not to, unless it messes up his fryer. But I'll talk to him about that. I prefer lard. It will not be fried in soy oil because Nicole Sauce is allergic to soy. So that's like when I give you food, it's usually fairly soy free because I don't even want it around. It's like Nighthawk's allergic to nuts, so we're not using almond flour on the fried chicken because it would kill Nighthawk. So we don't like to kill people around us.
Feed soy to the animals. I'm not going to feed it to people.
Well, some people like soy, and a lot of fry oil has soy in it, so that's always fun, right?
Well, if they want soy, they can bring their own soy to put on it.
Pack Rat says, you're making us feel better about our broccoli greens, Nicole. No heads here either. Yeah, they like a lot of nutrient. In Tennessee in the spring, you get a lot of pests. And if you don't want to use 7 Dust, because I don't, and you're not out there picking pests all the time, I'm not, then it is what it is. I do have less pest pressure now than I used to have. And I think that's just because I've been growing a variety of plants year over year. K-Box says, can you discuss herb drying options? The easiest way to dry herbs is to get a cookie sheet or make a frame where it's a screen so that air comes from under and then on top. Spread your herbs out on that and dry them in a dark room in your house at room temperature. They make herb drying things that hang from the ceiling that are nylon that just make it so that have racks that are, squishy and meshy. Work great. That's my favorite way to dry herbs when I'm not going to dry them in the freeze dryer. Now, I did a test last year with sage where I used a food dehydrator that adds heat. And that's something I would use if I didn't have any lower humidity places on my property. Like if I didn't air condition my house, which knocks out some of the humidity, and I just had a really humid house in the summer and the herbs didn't look like they were going to dry before they molded, then I would use a food dehydrator like an Excalibur on a very low setting, which I'm going to mute you, Tactical, so you're making weird noises again. So I would use that. The other thing I did is I just hung some herbs up, some sage up in a little bunch, like hanging as a bunch of herbs, and those dry pretty well that way here. And then I took some sage and I put it in my freeze dryer and I freeze dried it. Flavor wise, the freeze dried was better than anything else I did. So here's it. Freeze dried, superior flavor. Hung at room temperature, superior to dried with heat. So those are the 3 ways that I can do it. You can put it out in the sun, but I actually prefer to dry it in the dark. So if you're going to do it outside, I do it in a covered area. Okay. Next question we have, Nicole, what duck would you recommend for a family with kids? There are so many different breeds of ducks that the answer is I don't know. There are friendlier, like the Harlequin ducks or whatever. I've never had them, but I did have one here once. When I first moved in, I had a stray duck at my house, and we named her Borax. And she had moved up from down the road because other ducks were picking on her, and she was super friendly and would be great with kids. She could fly, though, and then she got eaten by something because she flew too far away. So That wouldn't be bad. I think what's more important is having them when they're young around your kids so that they develop a more friendly relationship with them. And then from that standpoint, the khaki Campbells that I have are great. And the only reason I like that breed or got that breed is it was the random breed I bought the first time. That's the only reason. And they give you an egg every day. They're great. Muscovies, I know you can make them friendly. The ones I have are more scared of people. And here's the thing. If you make your poultry too friendly, then they're going to walk up to any random predator and be like, hey man, how's it going? And then it's like, whoa, dead. So I like to try this, like find the fine line between I can handle the animal and or herd the animal and they're super friendly, want to cuddle. With kids though, you may want something that's not gonna flog them. I haven't had problems with ducks flogging. I've had issues with roosters flogging kids. So that's where if we have a rooster that starts going after kids, the rooster's gone. It dies because that's like right at eye level with those spurs. Nope. That's a non-starter for me, but we haven't seen ducks doing, like we've never had ducks just attacking people, and tactical just fell off, I think. So that's that answer. And we've already done it. Okay. We have a comment about boars. My boar hog got a tuna can stuck on his snout and nobody could get close to, yeah. So here's the problem. When you don't have an animal that will let you handle it and they have a problem, like their snouts caught in a tuna fish can, which probably looked really funny. They don't trust you to take it off. And you're not going to face down an 800-pound boar and be like, hey, can I pull that tuna can off your snout, please? If they don't want you to. It's just not going to happen. And it looks like it took weeks until the poor. So that's why we're probably going to expire Wilma. We're going to expire Wilma. Nighthawk says chicken soup. Do you need chicken soup? I can bring you chicken soup. Yeah. Because we can't handle her. And if she gets hurt, she's going to be hurt until we can fix the problem or expire her. And that's kind of an issue with unfriendly livestock, right? Got any thoughts on that, Tactical?
Yeah, I mean, like, Lady Pig's got an issue right now, but I've handled her enough. I've spent enough time with her. She's got a spot right over her rear hips that she really, really likes to get scratched. So I'll go in the pasture with her and I'll just sit there and rub her back, particular to the places that she can't reach, even scratching up against a tree or something. And so when I go in there, she will come straight up to me, which sometimes becomes a problem because she'll lean up against me like, you know, your cat does, except for she weighs a little bit more than a cat.
A little bit more. Mm-hmm.
But the other day when I was in there with her, because I saw that she had the foot problem, so I was actually scratching her with one hand, and with the other hand, I was actually able to reach over her, and I just ran my hand down her leg and squeezed a little bit just to see if she reacted at all, just to be able to see if I could find a problem. But I need to actually figure out how I can get her foot turned up so I can look at the bottom. And I'd really just prefer to have two people because as friendly as she is still an animal. And she does significantly outweigh me. And it takes me a good couple of steps to get to where I can easily evacuate that space. So, I mean, being friendly with your animals is definitely, I mean, you really need to do it just so that you can handle them like that. But at the same time, you also have to realize that they are still an animal.
Yeah. And James is saying, Muscovy boy ducks, watch the spurs. Yeah. I got a big old cut on my wrist, which if it had gone deep would have been bad. Not from a male, from a female. And so when I'm handling them, I wear long sleeves, even if it's summer. So, and then if you handle them younger, they actually will let you handle them more, like animals in general. Like when the sheep give birth, I'm like, any females born, we got to figure out, like, we have to decide if we're going to bottle feed those or not. If we bottle feed them, they'll be buddies with us, which would be good, because then if there's a birthing problem later or something, or we need to handle them, we can. Okay. James is asking, do you do anything special when freeze drying blueberries, like pricking or piercing them? Yes. So what I did is we washed them, we dried them, we put them on trays, and then I have a meat tenderizer that it's like a punch style with a bunch of little blades that Chef Brett gave me. That thing's awesome. So what I didn't like pierce them all the way, but I pricked them just lightly with that. And we had an assembly line going. So Mama Sauce was washing them. My niece was drying them, and then I was pricking them. And I put a tray's worth of blueberries in a Ziploc to pre-freeze, first of all. And then the last 4 trays went into the freeze dryer. It's actually still dehydrating right now because I did one cycle and they weren't quite dry. Like I started putting them in the jar and realized they were sticking to each other. I was like, that means those are still wet. Even though they didn't feel cold, I don't have a moisture meter. So I ended up taking the blueberries out, defrosting the food dryer, putting those blueberries back in that were not quite done, and putting through another cycle. And now I'm adding 12 hours to the dry cycle. So fruit that has seeds in it, like blueberries or strawberries, take a really, really long time to dehydrate because those seeds take a long time to dehydrate. And pricking the blueberries makes it a shorter period of time. But also with the hot weather and my freeze dryer being outside, it takes a while. So it is what it is. Layla says, I've read that perilla is edible and has medicinal properties. Why do you weed it out instead of harvesting it? Is this a pain to process? It's growing better than my veggies, so I'd like to use it. So the reason I weed perilla out is I don't want it in my garden, and it grows everywhere. So if I want to harvest perilla for medicinal or other reasons to use it, because it's a culinary herb that you can use, right? And the reason I don't leave it in my garden is it gets big and chokes everything out, and then everything else doesn't grow well. And once you have perilla in your garden, it keeps coming back until you aggressively weed it over time. And even then, if you have perilla nearby, you're going to get new perillas in your garden because the seeds will blow over. So that's why, because I don't need to foster it anywhere. It just grows here. Like the pasture where the goats are, they've eaten everything, and now we have perilla, and then we beat the perilla back, and that makes room for more grass to grow. And if we don't beat the perilla back, then we don't get grass because it chokes it out. So I laughed my butt off when I heard Jack Spirko was growing a special form of perilla in his garden. I probably should have reached out to him and told him, don't do it. And he was here, and he was like, oh, I grew perilla once, and boom, like it's still coming back. It's one of those plants. So perilla is a pain in the butt. And then I mean, it tastes okay, but I never want to eat much of it. So I don't need a lot of it. I prefer basil, not perilla, flavor wise. And so I grow a lot of basil. Basil grows aggressively here too. In fact, I need to harvest some and dry it this week. Okay. Looks like the last one. If anybody wants to get any questions in, now is a good time to type them. If not, this is our last comment. Nicole, thank you as always. Ordered coffee last night, shipping notification by 9 a.m. Why I support small businesses. Sometimes, guys, here's what happens. Let me tell you how our process works. We get orders in, and if it's a weekday, somebody, not me, makes the shipping labels. And they do it while I'm sleeping. So they're in a different time zone. And I wake up in the morning and I have shipping labels, I have a roasting chart, and we roast. However, if it's one of those days where I got 14 billion orders, I will roast as fast as I can and get what I can out by mail deadline. And then the rest of it may not go out till the next day. So it can take up to 2 business days for me to roast your order. And you may have gotten a shipping notification right away because the shipping notification is what I need to know what the priority is. That's the system we've worked out here. So Chuck, your order may or may not get out by 2 p.m. today, but that is what I'm doing after this live stream. Finish producing the podcast with a different keyboard because I totally spilled coffee on this keyboard. And then I am going to go out and get as many orders out as I can. It'll probably go out today. It just depends what time the mailman comes. If not, it's out in the morning tomorrow because I'll finish it today. I will finish today's roasting schedule today for sure because I've already looked at it. And then that'll go out. So I appreciate it. We try to get coffee out as fast as possible. Sometimes we we run into a shipping problem too. So sometimes, like we had for Independence Day weekend, because Monday was off, there were people who it took 4 days for their stuff to ship because closed, right? Closed post office, closed everything. So I had orders roasted, forgot that Monday was Independence Day. And then I was like, oh yeah, they're not coming today to pick that up. That's going out tomorrow. Follow up on your frankincense treatment. How many days did you use it until you noticed a reset of your taste and smell? So I had two things. I had misassigned smells December of 2021, and I started putting a drop of frankincense on my tongue and holding my tongue to the roof of my mouth. Nisi told me to try this, and I was like, well, it's frankincense. It's not going to hurt me. So I tried it, and I started getting, and then every time I ate or drank something that was weird, I tried to remember what it tasted like, and like, please taste like this, sort of thing. And that kind of worked. When I had COVID, I lost my smell, not my taste. And I did the frankincense thing then too. And it only took me a day. And I don't know if it had anything to do with the frankincense or if it was just that I lost my smell for a day. I had like 2 or 3 more days of misassigned things. But, when I lost my smell, coffee tasted like hot water. It did not taste like coffee. And then it tasted like burnt rubber. And then it tasted like coffee. That was sort of the advent it went through. So Jay Tharp wants to know, how do you save your basil? I freeze dry it. I didn't always freeze dry it. I used to make pesto, and I would make a pesto recipe without the Parmesan. So with the olive oil, the garlic, all of that. I would freeze it in ice cube trays. And then I would take those ice cubes and put them in a Ziploc baggie in the freezer. And then if I wanted pesto, I'd take however many ice cubes I wanted and add Parmesan back to it in the pesto. I don't eat pasta anymore. So pesto does get used here, but it's like pesto on squash or something like that. Or just eat pesto out of the bowl. No, not quite that. But pesto on squash is a big one. Or pesto into the spaghetti. Like those pesto ice cubes without adding the Parmesan straight into the tomato sauce, and it makes a great spaghetti sauce. So that's how I done it. So I would just do that. And then the other thing is just freezing the basil in Ziplocs works. And of course, drying it works great. Freeze drying it also works great. So those are the different ways that I will preserve basil. Mostly now I'm freeze drying the extra because I'm not pre-making. I might pre-make pressed pesto this year. Actually, that sounds kind of good. What do you think, Tactical? Do you want to have frozen pesto ice cubes in the freezer?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, whatever. Will you actually use them, or is it just like a me thing?
No, I'll actually use it.
Okay.
I was just there thinking about the fact that I need to get some freeze dried milk for down in the cabin.
Sure. I have. Yeah, I got a jar I can send down there. Tactical, did you plant them tobacco plants? Snail Creek Homestead.
No, those I still have the seed, but the 3 plants got stuck over in the area where all of the other plants that I needed to deal with were, and every plant that was over there died because I didn't get around to it, and the drought and trying to keep up with the sheep. I have not done a very good job at all this year with plants. I've done horrible about anything that I am trying to grow.
You know how much he's helping me in the garden?
With the exception of the only stuff that I've planted that's actually doing well right now is the stuff in the pig pasture that I've pretty much completely ignored.
Yeah, we should put a picture of the pig pasture up that we're rehabbing. There's a Franken squash down there. It's like the whole length of the fence, this giant squash. I don't know if you'll have internet, but sure, go down there and see if you can show people.
Well, I'm right on the other side of the driveway.
So Kate Miller says, I make my basil and freeze it in small canning jars. I assume you mean jelly jars and that you mean your like basil pesto. Yep, that's not a bad way. It's not a bad way. You can can it too, but I looked up canning it and it was a big pain in the butt. And I was like, it's better just to freeze it. So this, guys, looked like Mars in April. It was completely denuded of anything, hard packed clay. and we didn't till it or anything. We just overseeded. So that's a corn stalk. We didn't plant this stuff. It just came up. We've got a tomato. That's the Franken squash. And that's perilla behind it. That's right. We're letting the perilla go. I'm just like, whatever grows here. I don't. Do we have any squash on that plant yet? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, I'm looking for where it was. There's one on here somewhere, and I'm not
This is on my own
seeing it.
property, and I'm like, I haven't seen the squash on the Franken squash vine because I'm just like, there's a Franken squash vine, and then I keep walking. I'm walking the dogs today. Yeah.
Hopefully you can see that right there. That's definitely a Trompicino.
That's a Trombicino vine. Okay, I was wondering what that was because it was like Cushaw or Trombicino. We didn't know. So that's a Trombicino vine. That thing's like 30 feet long.
I'm wondering, that might be a spaghetti squash.
Oh, interesting. Did we have spaghetti squash seeds?
I did. So apparently
Okay.
I threw some over here. I'm just trying to figure out which plant is coming from where. So I think there's a base of one somewhere right there. So that's probably a spaghetti. And then coming from over there is the Trompicino.
Yeah, so it's a squash off at this point in the pig pasture. But that's rehabbing really fast.
Yeah, then there's a couple of others through here. And then there's a couple of spots like this where you've got tomato coming up, and then over here there's more tomato here, and there's actually tomatoes on this. Actually, that one looks ripe, so this must have been
pick it. Show us.
Bad spot right there, but that, I'm guessing, might be some form of a cherry tomato or something.
Yeah, it looks like. Is it yellow?
Kind of a yellowish orange.
Is it shaped like a pear?
Some of them are kind of shaped like a pear. I don't know.
Yeah, those are called lemon cherry tomatoes if they're pear shaped. And that was probably some random cherry tomato I bought at the farmer's market for fun, and then extra bits went down to the pigs and they ate them and they pooped and they planted these plants. So it's kind of fun to watch this area rehab itself after all the stuff.
There was a number right
you're
there.
You're falling off the internet.
But there was a couple of others over here, but when I went to clear a lot of that perilla and knock that down, I was finding like other tomato and squash and corn and various different things when I hit it with the weed eater.
Oops.
So it was like we would have a lot more.
That corn will not make corn because there's only one corn.
There's two on there.
No, there's only one corn plant.
Oh. Yeah.
So unless I find somebody else's corn and I shake the pollen over it, it's done. We're not getting ears of corn here. Yeah. So anyway, guys, I mean, it's kind of cool, the progress of that pasture, considering it was completely denuded and compacted and turned into a wallow here and there. It's coming back really well. We're going to chop and drop some of that stuff. We are letting the vegetables grow because, like, why not? They're volunteers. Just go for it. Not seeing a lot of other. What? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if for no other reason, I want seed off of those tomatoes.
Yeah.
I mean, they came up on their own and they survived the drought.
They did. We didn't water it. Well, I guess you were watering down there some, weren't you?
Periodically.
Yeah.
But I wasn't watering the tomatoes. I was watering to try to get something to grow in there to reseed after the pigs.
Yeah. And it did. We've got grasses and all sorts of stuff going in there. So I'm pretty pleased with that, the state of that rehab project. And hopefully by next workshop, it's going to be integrated into the food forest. So we're doing a food forest installation the last weekend of October. And that'll be a fun little event. And I'm sure that the pasture is part of it. So I need to get with Nick about the plan he came out here and he hasn't told me the plan, so we're gonna have to. I need to figure out what I need to source plant wise. So, anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. We'll get the podcast. The audio podcast will be out in about 2 hours or so, unless something goes wrong. And we'll see you next week with more Living Free in Tennessee. Also, Tactical said he's on. What's your channel called?
Tactical Redneck Equipment on YouTube.
So Tactical Redneck Equipment on YouTube. He's been putting some little homestead how-tos up that are not on my channel. And sometimes he takes over my channel. I think he's going to go back to sheep talk soon. So you can see what's up with the sheep and do some live streams there. So.
I'll probably try to do a live stream later today whenever they get moved. They do need to move today. If not today, first thing in the morning. Yeah,
they should move. So, yeah, moving the sheep is fun because they like to follow us. Anyway, like and subscribe and all of those things if you want to see more notifications and catch up on sheep talk. We haven't talked him into reading children's stories with the sheep yet, but we're working on that. We'll see how that goes. Okay, guys, make it a great week.